Welcome to Reno's World Podcast, where truth and myth collide, and every story gets a deep dive. I'm your host, Reno Rains, your guide through the unknown. Tonight's topic, the exorcism of Anneliese Michel. We're exploring the strange, the mysterious, and the downright unbelievable. And just so you know, we play an old movie to give you something to look at because, well, this is a podcast, and we like to keep things interesting. So sit back, relax, and let's unravel tonight's tale. It begins not with a whisper, but a scream. You can hear the voice, guttural, hoarse, crackling through the grainy hiss of a 1970s cassette recorder. It growls in Latin, then German, then something else, something indecipherable. But the voice doesn't belong to the girl it came from. That voice was recorded in 1975 in a small bedroom in Klingenberg, West Germany. And the girl's name was Anneliese Michel. She was 23 years old, but her story didn't start with demons. It started with doctors. At 16, Anneliese suffered a severe seizure. She was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition known to cause visual disturbances, auditory hallucinations, and altered states of consciousness. Medical records confirmed she was prescribed Dilantin, later Tegretol, but the seizures kept coming. And soon, they brought something else, voices. By age 20, she was hearing them constantly. They told her she was damned, that she would burn, that praying was useless. Her diary entries, later read in court, detail a descent into darkness. She wrote that she was seeing demonic faces throughout the day, shadows in her room, eyes in the corners of mirrors. She began sleeping on the floor, refused to eat, tore the skin from her arms and legs. Her behavior became violent toward herself and at times others. She growled, spoke in tongues, destroyed religious objects. She begged for help, not from doctors, but from priests. The Catholic Church, cautious and deliberate, initially rejected the family's requests. Psychiatric evaluations continued. One doctor noted she showed signs of religious delusion, but nothing stopped the episodes. In fact, they escalated. Then, in 1975, the family found a sympathetic ear, Father Ernst Alt. In a letter to the bishop, he wrote, "She doesn't look epileptic to me. I don't see any seizures. What I do see is something else, something demonic." After months of appeals, the local bishop, Joseph Stangl, gave formal approval. The church authorized a full exorcism under the ancient Ritual Romanum, a rite last used decades before. It began in September 1975. Father Alt, joined by Father Arnold Renz, would perform 67 sessions over the next 10 months. The priests tape-recorded many of them. The sounds on those tapes are still available to this day. Unsettling, undeniable. One voice says, "Ich bin Judas, I am damned." Another, "Hitler is here, I have him." According to the priest's official notes and court transcripts, Anneliese claimed to be possessed by 6 entities: Lucifer, Cain, Judas Iscariot, Adolf Hitler, Nero, and a disgraced 16th century priest named Valentin Fleischmann, a real historical figure defrocked by the church. These personalities would speak through her in different tones and dialects. Sometimes they argued with each other. Her voice would shift, deep masculine, rasping, and then in an instant, it would return to her own, pleading for peace. During the exorcism, she would perform hundreds of genuflections, sometimes dropping to her knees so violently that her kneecaps shattered. She once bit the head off a dead bird, according to her mother's testimony. At one point, her own family restrained her with ropes to keep her from injuring herself. Photos taken during this time, admitted into evidence at trial, show a pale, sunken face, her eyes hollow, her body starved. By spring of 1976, Anneliese had stopped eating entirely, believing food would nourish the demons inside her. She weighed less than 70 pounds. But her faith never broke. She told her priests and later her family that she chose this suffering, that she was a vessel, that she was atoning for the sins of others. "I want to suffer for the youth of Germany," she once wrote. "I want to make amends." On June 30th, 1976, the final exorcism session took place. She was too weak to stand. In her final moments, she whispered, "Beg for absolution." She passed at home the next morning. The official autopsy listed the cause of death as malnutrition and dehydration. She was 23 years old. The German state launched a full investigation. The tapes were seized, The priests were arrested. Her parents were charged. In 1978, the trial began, one of the most sensational courtroom cases in modern religious history. Psychiatrists testified that she suffered from a combination of epilepsy and psychosis. Religious experts countered, citing the recorded evidence, the voices, the inexplicable behavior. The court reviewed diary entries, medical records, audio tapes, witness testimony, and church documentation. Ultimately, her parents and both priests were found guilty of negligent homicide. They received suspended prison sentences. But long after the courtroom emptied, the questions remained. The voice on that tape still echoes. Who or what was speaking through Anneliese Michel? And what really happened in that small farmhouse in Klingenberg? She was buried in a modest grave in her hometown of Klingenberg. A simple wooden cross marked the spot. But it didn't stay simple for long. Within weeks, visitors began arriving, leaving flowers, candles, and handwritten notes. Some said they felt a strange presence near the grave. Others came hoping for healing, claiming they'd been touched by something divine. A quiet pilgrimage had begun, but the controversy had only just begun. In 1978, following the verdict, something unexpected happened. At her parents' request, Anneliese's body was exhumed. Why? The family said received a message from a nun in a distant convent who claimed to have had a vision that Anneliese's body was incorrupt. In Catholic tradition, incorruptibility, where a body resists decay, is seen by some as a sign of sainthood. When her coffin was opened, officials said the body had decomposed in a normal fashion. No photos were released. But her parents claimed they were shown otherwise, that the body was in better condition than expected. This claim was never verified. Still, the exhumation only added fuel to the fire. As public interest in the case grew, so did the questions and the divisions. The tapes, dozens of hours of groaning, snarling, ancient languages, and chilling proclamations, were played on German television. People debated their authenticity. Were they the voices of demons, or a young woman in the throes of a psychological breakdown? Medical experts insisted it was the latter. In court, psychiatrists argued that Anneliese had suffered from schizoaffective disorder combined with temporal lobe epilepsy, and that the symptoms were compounded by intense religious belief and social pressure. But that didn't explain everything. Father Renz and Father Alt stood by their claims. So did Anneliese's family. They believed she had been possessed, fully, violently, and that medical treatment had failed her where faith had not been allowed to finish its work. One detail often overlooked, a report surfaced during the trial that a bishop in Würzburg had privately approved an exorcism request from another family just months earlier, under similar circumstances, but it was never made public. The church, it seemed, was quietly still recognizing cases of possession, just not admitting it openly. In the years that followed, the Vatican responded. In 1999, Pope John Paul II issued new guidelines for exorcism, the first update to the Ritual Romanum since 1614. It required stricter evaluation, medical screenings, and psychological tests before an exorcism could be approved. Some saw this as a direct reaction to the Michel case. Meanwhile, cultural impact exploded. In 2005, the film The Exorcism of Emily Rose was released, loosely based on her story. It revived global interest and reignited debate. That same year, Der Exorcismus der Anneliese Michel, a German documentary, presented never-before-heard audio recordings. Thousands revisited the tapes. Some couldn't listen all the way through. Then there was the question of the voices. Linguists were brought in. Analysts claimed the voices were all coming from the same vocal tract, that they belonged to Anneliese herself. But how she maintained such distinct tones, accents, and dialects for hours at a time remained unexplained. To this day, the Vatican has never formally recognized her case as one of verified possession, but neither has it ever publicly declared it false. What did happen to Anneliese Michel? A devout girl crushed by her own religious fervor? A tragic case of untreated mental illness misinterpreted by the faithful? Or was it something else? Visitors still come to her grave. They pray, they leave rosaries. Some claim they've seen lights in the cemetery at night. Others report dreams. Her story continues to haunt, divide, and inspire. One former classmate, now a psychologist, once told a German newspaper, I still don't know what happened to her, but I know what I saw, and I'll never forget it. In a world of science, it's easy to believe that every mystery has a rational answer, but sometimes the evidence doesn't cooperate. Final analysis: Michel's medical history and seizure disorder. Verified as true. The audio recordings of the exorcisms. Verified as true. Claimed demonic identities and voices. Unverified, part of the legend. Exhumation resulting in incorrupt body. Unverified, disputed claim. Supernatural cause of death. Debunked, proven false by autopsy. What remains is a tragic, deeply human story of belief, suffering, and the terrifying silence between science and the sacred.